Hello, this is Phil Wagoner. I'm here today with the latest edition of my podcast, Raising Godly Children in an Ungodly World. In it, I'm interviewing young men and women who have gone through or are currently in the last 2 years of high school or college, or are new to navigating the world as an adult. These are young people who have kept their faith in God through the social and mental pressures that affect us all, especially young adults who are trying to find their niche in life. I want to know how they did it and are continuing to do it as they go from one step to the next in life. Then, when possible, we'll talk to their parents and get their perspective on their involvement. And at the end, I'll expound on a scripture from the Bible that talks about parenting. I have with me today a young man that I've known for a lot of years. Do you remember, Jackson? Were you in kindergarten when you started Children's Church?
My parents brought me to our church when I was 2, and so I've been coming since then. So I remember in kindergarten when you were our kid's pastor.
Yeah. Okay. So I've known him since he was 2, and he's 18 now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, 16 years. There you go. Didn't know there was going to be math in this, did you? Anyway, this is Jackson Sorensen, and you may remember that we interviewed his brother-in-law and sister, Abby and Josh, not too long ago. So now we finally caught up with Jackson. You're a busy man, Jackson.
I am.
Let's start off with this. I know who I think Jackson Sorensen is. Who do you say Jackson Sorensen is?
Well, I mean, I've got a Bible in front of me, and that's what tells me who I am. Actually, I have Matthew 15:11 up right now, which I talked about this morning when I shared from camp. And it says, what defiles a man? What makes a person a person? What ruins you and what makes you better? And according to this, it's the things that you say and what God says about me.
So what I heard you say, Jackson, is that you want people to know you according to what the Word of God says about you.
Exactly.
And that is, I'm going to assume that that's the standard that you try to live by.
It is. And with that, people have said about me, because that is the standard I want to live to. That's the way I want people to see me. I want people to say, hey, that's Jackson. That's the kid who loves Jesus. But what I have people said about me is that, oh, you think you're all holier than thou and you're better than us because you love Jesus, when in reality, who I am is a broken man who came to God and he helped me. And that is what I want people to see, is that I was broken, I was lost, I had all of these issues, and instead of running to the world, I ran to the Word, and he made me who I am, because that's not who I was before.
Well, that kind of tells me what my second question was going to be, is what was high school like for you? Was it hard to get along in that kind of or was that the atmosphere?
It was a very difficult atmosphere, especially coming in. My freshman year was COVID, and so we were trapped in our homes for so long, and that much time alone can damage a person. And then you go into high school, which is damaging on its own, and you have to rediscover who you are when you get to high school. And it's very, very easy to fall into the trap of, I want these people to like me. If I do this, they'll like me, so I'm going to do this. And I did fall into that trap. I got involved in things I should not have been involved with. I was with people who, they did not care about me at all, but I wanted them to, and so I would hang out with them, even though that they were not the people that I should have been hanging out with.
So when did you come to the realization that, hey, I'm going the wrong way? I got to be honest with you, that surprises me. Of course, I see you every Sunday at church, and here's this church kid and got his act together and everything like that. So at what point did you say, hey, this is not the direction I want to go?
So one of the issues with the direction I was going is that I knew the entire time what I was doing was wrong, and I was disregarding it. I knew the Bible. I grew up in church, and I was at church every Sunday, every Wednesday, and I made that a priority in my life to be there, when in reality my mind was elsewhere, even though my body was there. And so the turning point was camp for me. And I know that what happens a lot is that Kids go to camp, they get all high on Jesus. For about 2 weeks after, they're all go get 'em, and then reality kicks in, and they're back to their old ways very quickly.
Right.
But the camp that really changed me was in between my freshman and sophomore year, because in between 8th grade and freshman, there was no camp. COVID had hit. We didn't have social gatherings, so we couldn't have camp. And I think that made Camp 2021 all that much better, all that much more powerful, because we had gone without it, realized how much it meant, and so that camp really changed my perspective on things. And I came back, and within a week, I had cut people out of my life who were in it before, and I had started going down a new path, and I burnt bridges so that there was no going back, even if I wanted to.
So how'd that work out for you? I mean, did you regret that? Was there a point where you said, "Oh, I wish I hadn't done that"?
Yeah, there really was. There was times that I said this would be easier if I didn't,
Mm-hmm.
it would be easier if I didn't focus on God like I did.
So that's what you did in those circumstances when that peer pressure got the greatest. You focused on God. Is
Yeah.
that what I hear you saying? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
That is really what I try to do, and what I like to think I do, even though I know that there's sometimes that I don't. But really, when things get the hardest, I try and focus on God the most. But there are times when things get hard, I focus on God again, and I press into His Word more. I start listening to the right kind of music, stop listening to the wrong kind of people. And as an example, as of recently, I was going through a rough patch just before camp this year, and that's what I was doing. Was I was pursuing God. I get to listen to music all day at work in my earbuds, and all day at work I'm listening to worship music and messages. But I get home at night, and I had tried all day long to fill myself with God, but then as soon as the music's gone and I'm staring at the ceiling listening to myself, there's no good thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. I think I know what the problem was. Do you want to tell us what was going on that kind of was bumming you out?
Well, I had just gotten out of a relationship that had lasted over 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Which was with me for all of high school. Just a couple weeks after graduation, it ended, and that was a rough situation.
Mm-hmm.
I
Can I define rough situation? Is it made you feel bad? You were sorry. You were depressed about it, or
yeah.
there
was a lot of anxiety coming from it. I felt alone, because that was the person who I had in my life, and the closest person to me for a very long time. And then also, all of our friends, we're all one big friend group. Well, there was a divide between two people. Somebody's got to be on the outside, and unfortunately, that was me.
Really?
And all of our mutual friends, they all say the same thing of, we don't want to choose sides. We want to be there for both of you. And it's nice that they say that, but I know that they're lying. And that's okay. There is no bitterness in my heart towards her at all.
Okay, so she was in your youth group,
Mhm.
or is she still in the
Still
youth
is.
group? Yeah. So, and you're about to age out of that group.
Within the next couple weeks, yes, I am aging out.
So is that going to help, or are you okay now?
I am okay post camp. Going into camp was rough.
Was she at camp?
She was, and that made it all the more rough. So, of course, there's the divide between our friends, and I had told her beforehand. I had texted her a couple weeks before camp, and I didn't want to go, because I knew she would be there. It was rough. I was trying to pursue God, and it wasn't doing anything for me. And I had texted her a few weeks before camp, and I said, hey, I don't know if I want to go to this, because it's going to be difficult. Is there a chance that we can be friends? We can be part of the same friend group. We can talk at camp, so that I can have this community of believers that I know is important. And she says yes, which I was ecstatic about.
So it was I'm mad at you, you're mad at me, I don't like what's going on type breakup, or?
It really wasn't. I had made mistakes in the relationship. There was miscommunications. She had made mistakes. I had made mistakes. We didn't talk about them when we needed to, and we just buried them. We moved on. Figured, hey, if we just don't break up over it, then we'll never break up. And then they all just they piled up, and we realized, hey, we're leaving for college soon, and long distance is not going to work with what we've built, and so it needs to end.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very rough for both of us for the first probably 2 weeks.
That really surprises me that it would have affected your friend group the way it did, though. I'm an old guy. I guess I don't. To me, okay, you're my friend, you're my girlfriend. Okay, now you're not my girlfriend, but you're still my. Yeah, that wouldn't have.
So the people in my friend group, I absolutely have nothing against them.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that it's a very rough situation because they're good friends with both of us. So first off, these people, I know that I can still go to them. If I have an issue, I can still text them, I can call them, and they would help me. But I know that they would have to pick sides eventually. They can sit in the middle for a little while, but eventually they're going to have to go to one side or the other. And since I have no bitterness towards her, and I want her to be able to get over this.
All right. So knowing what you know now about dating and a serious relationship in high school,
Mm-hmm.
Would you do it again? Would you recommend it?
People have still come to me for advice. Friends at school, people at church, who weren't part of that friend group that I mentioned before. That I'm not going to say I'm not a part of, but I'm less involved with.
Mm-hmm.
But people will come to me and they ask me about relationships, especially at camp. Camp is full of hormonal teenage boys, and there's girls at camp, and they think that this is their time to get numbers, get Snapchats. And I had talked to a few of them, and just don't. I mean, I got very lucky that I wound up in a loving long-term relationship, but in reality, dating in high school is not worth the trouble of it. And it does work out. For example, Abby and Josh started dating when they were 14, and now Josh just turned 29, and they have 4 kids.
Yeah.
So it worked out very well for them. I would say for the most part, be content being single.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very difficult for a lot of people. And it was difficult for myself, especially because right after the breakup, it was difficult for me to not have that person that I could always go to about things.
Sure.
And so being content, being single, and just waiting for someone to come along on their own is difficult. But if it's God's plan, then that's what will happen. If you pursue God, I heard this from a pastor the other day. He said, chase after God, sprint after him with all that you have, leave everything behind and run after him. And if you're looking to marry someone, then they should be able to catch you. If you're sprinting at God, and if they can catch you.
That's pretty good advice.
I really do believe that it is.
Along the same lines, that if you're doing the will of God, as you know the will to be, love the Lord with all your heart. The second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. If you're in that sphere, the blessings of God and the will of God, the personal will of God, the specific will of God for you will catch up with you.
Exactly.
And so if you know that, then you can be content where you're at. Remembering back to relationships that I had before I was married, you spend a lot of time trying to please that relationship.
Absolutely. And that is a mistake that was made.
That is a mistake. Yeah, I agree. It's a mistake in marriage too. It's, the priorities are the biggest thing in life. I mean, and your number one priority is your relationship with God.
Absolutely.
And your number 2 priority is your family, your spouse, in your case, your mother and dad, and sister and nieces and nephew.
And new nephew, yes.
Yeah, finally got a nephew in there. So yeah, go ahead.
Actually, there is one more thing I wanted to add is while I was at camp, we have these we have prayer sessions.
Mm-hmm.
They're from 7:15 to 7:45 in the morning, and then 6:15 to 6:45 at night. And they're optional, so if you want to spend that time, go take a nap, go take a shower, whatever. And the idea of it is be there in the silence and enter into God's presence, and only with the people who want to be there, so there's less distractions. Because a lot of time during chapel, there are kids who, they're there for the fun and games and to get girls' numbers, and they're distracting when you're trying to enter into the presence. And so prayer is one of the best parts of camp. And what I always like to take advantage of is being there as early as possible. So for evening prayer at 6:15, we have dinner at 5, and then prayer at 6:15. So there's an hour and 15 minutes of just nothing there. And one of the things I would do is, as soon as I'm done eating, I go sit in the prayer room, and there's nobody in there because prayer is the only thing we use that for. And I sit and I read my Bible. It's hard in day-to-day life to find time, especially a full hour, hour and a half, to sit down and read your Bible and focus on that, because we have our phones and our lives and our work and school and all of these other things going on. And so I would sit and I would just read. And I would do that every day before evening prayer. And then for morning prayer, I was there probably 20-30 minutes early in the morning, and always sitting there reading, getting into the presence, taking notes just from my own heart, from my own Bible. And one of the pastors who was there, one of the guest pastors, I'm not exactly sure which church he is from, but his name is Pastor Bill Clays. And he came up to me one of the times that I was in there early, and he was talking to me about, being in there early and focusing on God on my own. And one of the things he said to me is, that makes you quite a man.
Yeah.
So and it goes back to Matthew 15:11 of what defiles a person. What makes me a man is my relationship with God.
While you're saying that, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, you're unusual, okay? And in a good way. I mean, I absolutely, I can tell you that from the top looking back,
Mm-hmm.
I'm 60 years older than you or more. So looking back from the top, you're on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely. But, however, I know very few young men and women that are going to, when they have an extra hour and a half, are going to sit and read their Bible and pray.
Yeah.
So why do you think you're like that? What makes you?
Well, in reality, outside of camp, if I have an extra hour and a half, which is very rare that I have that much extra time, especially in life today, in all honesty, very rarely does that time go to spending reading my Bible, getting into the presence.
So you do have some normalcy.
Yeah, no.
I don't.
I'm still a teenage boy who will get sucked into scrolling on his phone or taking a nap.
Yeah. Well, I also know that you love to hunt and fish.
I do.
And play outside, and you've got at least 2 4-wheelers that I know of, and because I've borrowed one of them, and it's pretty cool. Let's go back to the beginning of our conversation when you said, when things get tough, I begin to focus on God more. Mm-hmm. I go to God. That works for you.
Yeah. Well,
would you recommend it?
Obviously, I have to recommend going to God with your issues. However, if you are not in a place where you can understand His plan in terms of, why am I not getting what I ask for?
Stop. What define place? You mean mentally, spiritually,
mentally,
or a physical place?
When I went through this hardship for the past 2 months before camp, I remember very, very well, I was pursuing Him, trying to get closer to Him, because I knew that my peace would come from Him, and that, He was the great comforter, Prince of Peace. But I didn't feel like I was getting that. And I remember one very specific time, I was in my car, I was driving, I had been listening to worship music, and at one point I reached over and I turned the radio down, I turned the music off, and in my car driving home, I'm sobbing. Like, there is, it's gross snot, just bawling my eyes out in my car, screaming at God, why did you abandon me? Because I had been asking all these things. I'm pursuing him. I'm getting my word more than I ever did before because I know that he's my comforter, but I felt no comfort. I'm still anxious and stressed, and I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I'm just so caught up in everything that's happening and trying to pursue him and getting nothing out of it. And I felt disappointed. I was disappointed. I felt abandoned and broken, and he was not giving me the comfort that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And that feeling continued for quite a while, and it was part of the reason that I didn't want to go to camp.
Mm-hmm.
It was because, he hasn't helped me, and I've been pursuing him for...
So God didn't jump in the car and start patting you in the back and say, it's
No.
okay, Jackson, I'm here with you.
He really didn't, and it would have been great if he did.
Yeah.
Even Monday morning, we leave for camp at 10. My alarm goes off, and I'm laying in bed staring at the ceiling saying, turn off the alarm and go back to sleep. Just don't go. It's not too late. Back out. And I did not want to, but I knew in my spirit that camp is the place to go to get better, is to go to get closer to God. And that's what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew that camp was where I had to be. And even driving to camp, stopping at Dollar General to get energy drinks, I was thinking, just go home, just stop, just turn around. And getting to camp, same feelings of turn around, doesn't matter, leave.
You didn't drive yourself to camp?
No.
Okay. So you really, once you got there, you were there.
Yeah, once I got there, I'm stuck. Like, there's no going back. Well, I could have found a way to go back, but...
Called your mommy.
Yeah. pretty stuck once I'm there, but it was still the feeling of I don't want to be here because I feel abandoned. There's the girlfriend who I had just broken up with, and she was there. All of my friends that I didn't get to talk to were all there, and so it was hard.
It sounds like you were having a pity party.
I was. I really I was.
And you were it was a big party.
It was a big party. I was wallowing in self-pity, and I wanted Jesus to come and wallow with me, and he didn't, and it made me even more pitiful. And obviously that's not helping. I remember that first night at prayer, like, because we had prayer at 6:15 and then service afterwards. So that first night at prayer was the first time I had really, I let that weight come off of me. Because I had been ridiculously overwhelmed and stuck, and I had just hated it. And at prayer, I finally felt that weight come off of me.
You just said, I let that weight off me.
Yeah.
And then you said in prayer, I felt it come off.
Yeah.
So it was a decision that, okay,
I finally
God,
had
I'm
to
not
let
going to
go.
do this anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I finally came to him, and more tears. There was a lot of crying this camp. I finally gave it up. I gave it to God. And that was the first time for quite a while, despite me pursuing him like I had been, that I really felt his presence around me. That I felt him put his hand on me, felt that warmth, felt that hug. Didn't help the crying issue anymore. That first session it allowed me to embrace camp for what it is. It's a time that you are cut off from the world, that you get to pursue Jesus the way that you should be during your everyday life, and it helps you.
That's a tremendous statement, Jackson. The way you should be in your everyday life.
Exactly.
You have to make time. I want to ask one last question. This has really been great. I hope that people are hearing not only the story, but the spirit behind the story. This can be a big help to a lot of people, to a lot of young people, because you're not unique in this situation. I know that relationships, boy-girl relationships, even friendship relationships, in particularly in high school, it seems, are very important. You can't just, as an adult, sometimes you can say, if I got a relationship that goes south at work, I can just avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to, I'm not there every day. I'm not at camp with them,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing where, and there's other, as an adult, it's a different game. It's a different game. And, but at any rate, there was a point in your life when you wanted to be a preacher.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still there?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. What is your spiritual plan or your goal?
So there's a lot of confusion, really. And one of the things I ended up talking to God about was, I remember laying in my bunk and just talking to him. I wouldn't even say I was praying. I was just talking to him like he's my friend.
That's kind of what prayer is.
Yeah. And I was finally letting go of all the formality of prayer and just having a conversation with him like a friend. And one of the things I said to him, actually I do believe I have it in my notes here somewhere, is I said a lot to him. And one of the things I said is that I trust you, but I'm scared.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't see an inch in front of my face. I don't know what comes next. And I know that you have good plans for me, but it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know where my next step is. And so he's helping me through that. And there's still absolutely that desire. I want to have my own church someday. I want to be at the pulpit because I got my 30 seconds of glory today. And I want a lot more. One of my favorite parts of camp is when I get back and they put a microphone in my hand.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll give you this scripture, and this'll it won't help, but it'll answer your question. In Proverbs chapter 3, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. That goes back to do what you know to do, what the Bible says for you to do, and you'll walk into it. It'll pop up on your path that go, oh, okay, here I am. And it's one of the things we do, I think, as people is we get a desire from God. We know it's from God. And so then we try to direct it. Well, okay, God, yeah, I'll do this. Here's how we're going to do it. And God says, I got a better way.
They call that Jesus Incorporated.
Yes.
It doesn't work. It's a failing business.
No, you're right. Well, anyway, thank you very much, Jackson. This has been very good. And we'll do it again in about a year and just to see what's changed. How's that sound?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. That's our podcast for the day. Thanks for listening. If you're interested in a daily devotional, we have what we call the Word to Live By that goes out every morning. To have that sent to you on a daily basis, send me an email at pbwags@gmail.com. That's pbwaggs@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.